Yeah.
You're good with our record on my phone.
Okay, it's 5:05, and all the second meeting, Lublers for the board of review to order, and please silence your cell phone. Elsie, would you please do the roll call?
Sure. Mike Bell, Larry Stussy,
Here.
Peggy Cruz, Mike Marty,
Here.
Chuck Phillipson,
Here.
Roger Troutman,
Here.
Scott Thompson.
Okay, Chair Cruz is joining.
She's going to be, but
Okay,
yes.
joining via Zoom, so Vice Chair Stussy will run the meeting. Okay, Larry?
First order of business, we're looking to adopt a policy regarding procedure for sworn telephone testimony and sworn written testimony. And this resolution 23-01 is in our packets. And if you take a chance, once you have looked at it, then I would ask for a motion and second to approve.
So move. Second.
Moved and seconded. So resolution 23-01 will take a roll call vote.
Just a voice vote is not to have.
Voice vote?
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, passed. Next order of business is to adopt the policy regarding procedure for waiver of Board of Review hearings requests. And this is resolution 23-02 in your packet. Likewise, if you have had a chance to look at it, I would entertain a motion and second to approve it.
So move. Second.
Okay. Motion and second. I ask for the vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you. We will now have the filing and summary of annual assessment report by Paul Rainbow from Accurate Appraisal LLC.
Okay, so I just on board table area here, just basically gonna go through it here. Field work was completed, that means we went out to visit the properties that we were required to visit, it's done July 10th. And when we do all the field work, then the reviewers back at the office review the ones to see what values need to be added, those was done by July 15th, and then any changes that were made. Two properties, the notices were mailed out July 17th. And we held the open book here, right in the corner, July 27th. Myself and Lori, another assessor, Lori, sat over here. During the field work, we did visit 79 parcels. We had 64 firms that were reviewed, and there are 85 total sales in the village. Of that, 48 were arm's length transactions that are usable. And we did have people that called and questioned their value for the open book, that was 67. For new construction in the community for last year was $4,585,900. That includes new homes and basement, people that finished off their basements, upgrades, the kitchens, stuff like that. And the commercial value itself is pretty low at 25,000. And in terms of breakdown of the customer contact, 109 residential, 42 commercial. And they went down and did the quality checks where they checked some of the work and was all completed.
Thank you, Paul.
And just for the record, we're going to add that Mike Bell and Peggy Cruz will join the meeting at 5:08 p.m.
Thank you. I, Larry Stussy, Vice Chair of the 2023 Board of Review, have examined the 2023 assessment roll and find it to contain the signature of Paul Reyna.
We still have to.
Yep, we have to do that. Yeah, he's not, yeah, he's been done with his,
Okay. Am I ahead of myself here?
I think a little bit, but you're doing great, Larry.
I'll slow down.
Yep, he's filling it out right now and then he'll present it.
Oh,
So we have two copies of the assessment affidavits, one for myself, one for the municipality. Signing that right now, and then Kelsey also has this sign.
didn't mean to rush it, Paul.
You're fine there.
I'm new,
You're doing great.
even though I'm old. The new and the old.
Thank you. Just for you to review. And do you want him to look at the actual role that you have too, Paul, or?
Here.
Thank you. Roll.
Okay.
And Paul, do you want to explain just the edits that are in there and the totals page that you told me about?
In terms of omitted properties, there were no omitted properties or correction of errors that we had to deal with. All the open book changes or updates, anything that we change our open book were updated in this role.
So do you have one signature at the end?
It would be this affidavit right
This
here.
here?
This would be his signature saying that the role is complete and as presented.
Okay. Thank you.
If you're done with these, I can take these too.
Okay. So I will state once more, being vice chair of the 2023 Board of Review, I have seen that the assessment role has been signed by Paul. And I think he has also answered some questions.
And that's, I think we can jump right to letting taxpayers examine the role if there's anything here that wants to do so. Hopefully we can insert the calculation errors, and I think we just need a motion in a second to certify that there was no corrections of error
Okay,
based on Paul's.
right. So I would move that we accept the assessment role as presented. I would ask for a motion to approve the assessment role as presented and second.
Household move.
Thank you. I'll second it. Okay. Motion has been made and seconded to accept the assessment role. And this is a roll call vote.
Nope, it'd just be a voice vote, and this is just to certify no corrections of error in the role.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And Larry, I have one question for Paul while we're here.
Okay,
What about ag use, ag conversion? Was there any changes there with the role?
No,
Thank you. Yep, we can, is there any taxpayers here that want to examine the role? Okay. I have to ask. All right, so moving right along, we had one objection that was filed that was not resolved prior to Board of Review. Brandon Legler of B Investments LLC, owner of the property at 11 13th Avenue, filed an objection on Monday, August 28th, 2023.
would you, is there more you need to present then?
You just let the record show and start right here, Larry, where it says.
Okay.
Yep,
Let the record show that Brandon Whitewood has joined the Board of Review at the beginning, 7. I
at
guess,
5:14.
5/14 on this 30th day of August, 2023. Kelsey, can you verify that this objection is written and complete?
Verify for the record that Mr. Legler's objection is written and complete.
Would you please present, introduce the case for Mr. Legler?
Sure. So this is the case of Brandon Legler of B Investments LLC. You all have a hard copy of that objection. The property owner resides at 860 10th Avenue here in New Glarus. The address for the property in question is 11 13th Avenue here in New Glarus. The tax key for this property is 231-610-667.0100. This property has been classified for assessment purposes as commercial, and the value in the assessment roll for the current year is $115,400 in land, $897,800 in improvements, for a total of $1,013,200. And I'll go ahead and swear everybody in. Brandon, feel free to move up to this table if you'd like. That's a spot for you. Okay, so I'm gonna start with Brandon. Do you, Brandon, have an attorney representing you in the matter of the 2023 property tax objection before this board? Okay, and then all persons, including the assessor, intending to provide testimony for this hearing, please raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony which you shall give in the matter now in hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? If so, answer I do.
I do.
And then each person who has just been sworn in, please state your name and address for the record, and Brandon will come with you. And then your address.
60,
Thank you.
Paul Reinable, 1428 Windway Road in Menasha.
Perfect. And then Brandon, the Board of Review wants me to understand that under state law, the Board of Review is required to uphold the assessor's valuation of your property as being correct, unless you, by your testimony, can show that the assessor's valuation to be incorrect. In other words, the burden of proof is on you as a taxpayer. Do you understand that? Okay, and then for the record, will you please state what your opinion is of the fair market value of your property?
Sure. You said we just had.
Yeah, you can start with that, and then you can go right into your case.
Yes, I can really put a number, I guess initially I put a number at 70.
I think you had 675.
65, yeah. And just, I guess, for the record too, they did come back and, we had assessed it. So technically the new number. Okay. So anyway, yeah, then going back to, I guess my case, I looked at different comps within New Glarus, and you know, it's hard obviously with most commercial buildings, let alone a childcare center, which in some regard, I mean, could essentially be found in most buildings. I mean, like the buildings that I have here, I think out of 11 of them, 9 or 10 of them could elevate childcare center. But so anyway, the comps that I use are relatively, I couldn't find a lot of the square footage, but based on my building does not have, it's just slab on grade, so there's no basement. Less than an acre, so the land and acres on that counts very little bit, but again, no basement. Roughly 7,500 square feet is what it's set. So the comps I use, most of them with the additional floors or multiple floors, they have would have quite a bit more square footage. Whether that's living or whatever would be considered, but it's definitely more square footage. And I don't know, I guess I questioned accurate on the initial phone call that I had, and I questioned them because I did, you know, I understand that there's a difference in construction practices to some degree. You know, so a couple of them are full sheds. But with the square footage and the placement of it, I thought they still would. But anyway, so I guess, yeah, this I'm looking at the 675 with that. And I still think, so they did come back at 864, but I still feel it's so based on the comps that I.
You have anything else, Brandon?
So it's always been, and I was telling Paul too, it's always been kind of a struggle. Like, I think initially when we built it, almost 11 years ago, that I thought it was assessed high. And we did, I was able initially to get it down the first year I went open book and they increased it quite a bit because I think the first tax roll was 2013 or 14 or something. And it was 20,000. The following year, I think some 16,000. So I'm just trying to keep things like, I understand like there's other reasons that could be evaluated at that price and we can't go because it makes 7,500 square foot for even 864, I don't think, but relative to the buildings that I listed, the confident that I feel like it should be closer to that. Because I know like, either side of the bank and the embassy, like I would without the extra $200,000 in my pocket, I would absolutely trade on those buildings for mine, heartbeat. Worth 668. Be about the same. Guess that's.
Paul, do you have any questions for Brandon?
Yeah, I just wanted to verify that. Do you know if any of these buildings have sold recently or if we just pull them off the assessment?
No, I don't believe any of the commercial concepts. So, and I just, like I said, I used, do you have this? Oh, I do.
Yeah,
I gave this to you.
Yes, I got it.
Well, the Swiss Air Motel, so I don't know. You guys. That was kind of a distant comp. I mean, there's obviously much more square footage and place the I actually. That would be the only one I think.
You mentioned too in your written here that none of the other buildings in the village were ATR because there's for profit.
I was talking to Kelsey today too, that, the only one, it's hard to find, the, Bowel has one that is roughly this square, same square footage. By the dentist office there, and then, I mean, that's just like, I think it was 7. Yeah. Okay, it looks as far as. I didn't know if they're at
Okay, at this point, the board can ask any questions of the objector.
Yep, so if the board has any questions for Brandon specifically, and then after you ask your questions of Brandon, Paul will present the assessor side.
Is there a chance to ask him questions after he's presented? Or, I mean, if there's anything that comes up that would be like a rebuttal question or?
I think so, because what will happen after both parties present their testimony, Larry will close the testimony portion, but that gives the time for the board to deliberate, and I think during that time, the board can ask anybody questions, correct?
No, not the opposite.
Oh, okay,
The board says we're going to deliberate
Yeah.
and there's no more questions.
gotcha, okay,
You
good to know,
start
that's
talking,
why.
say, well, let's all clarify this. Once you start to deliberate, questions are.
Got it, good to know, thank you, Paul.
Questions are, once I present, then you ask me questions, and then Brandon can ask questions, and then, or we'll say any other questions for the objector, and then Larry will make a motion to deliberate, and once from deliberate, then.
But we can still ask questions before deliberation.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. If the board has any questions from Brandon, now would be a good time, otherwise we can move to Paul's testimony, and you can always ask questions after that too. Okay, Paul, you wanna go ahead?
I just want to go through the timeline here real quick. So Brandon did talk to an assessor at the office on August 3rd. That's where Patty asked him to send in income expense or financial information on the building, which he did. So once our office received that, our commercial team reviewed the data that Brandon supplied using the income approach. And the original value, assessed value of the property was what it has on your outline here of 1,013,200. Based on the financial data that we received, we lowered that to 864,000 based on the data. And just so you are aware, the average market increase in the village was anywhere from roughly around 60 to 65%. Based on what we lowered the value of the subject property, that increase is now 37% based on it. So that's really, in terms of looking at the comps that Brandon supplied, that's why I asked him if any of them was recently sold or anything. It's a market update. So if you're just going off of old assessment histories, well, that's not really what we compare properties to. Yeah, it's sold or something.
But assessments should be fairly equal, shouldn't they?
Ideally, they would be, yes.
And
But these, once again, different buildings have different prices. Some building, one building is part office and part warehouse or storage garage. The value overall square footage of that dollar per square foot would be much lower than something like an office building or daycare.
so you are sort of basing this on income.
Yes. The market approach we bought, it brought it up to over $1 million, 1,013,000.
But your income approach.
About 864.
Oh, brought it to 864, but then back up again.
No, the assessment right now is at 864,000.
But that was not accepted by Brandon, so as of this, at this point, the original assessment amount was the $1 million.
Sorry.
Okay, I think I missed something here.
That $1 million on the sheet is what he had put on the application.
That was the original.
Yep.
Assessment value. Then Brandon sent in his financial information, the commercial team looked at it, we used an income approach to value it off of that, which the value was lowered to 864,000.
Was that the total value lowered to that?
Yes.
Okay. I thought maybe you meant just the
No.
building.
No, total value.
Total value, thank you. Okay. How does the amount of plumbing, how is that reflected in assessment? So if you start adding bathrooms,
Well, typically, this is commercial property, but typically for,
commercial property.
yeah, so typically for residential, it would be $5,000 for a bathroom. In assessment value, if somebody added from one bathroom to 2 bathrooms, it'd be $5.
How about commercial property?
Probably be fairly similar.
Similar, okay.
Does the board have any other questions for Paul or Brandon?
So we can,
Yeah, until we go into deliberations, you can ask either party.
so Brandon did we know there's been problems with this type of business recently. It's been much publicized. Has there been, evidence of a downturn from the income approach?
I don't, well, so I'm not a financial guy. So the sheet that he had me do, I went through and part with the accountant, so they just, so, and I don't know. So she also had it, probably, said something like it was 96,000, I think was the income that was used.
Right, the information you supply to us is confidential. If you want to share, you can share it.
Well, I didn't-
I can't.
But you didn't answer your question, Chuck. Yeah, I mean, we,
I'm not asking for specific,
right,
specifics.
we received, significant, grants and stuff last year through the COVID relief stuff, which would, you know, kept us afloat, basically, but, the income, or I don't know what sheet that is, that called income loss sheet or income.
Income expense, it's open
Expense. So it's different too, and I don't, I'm not one to disagree with how this is handled, because it's in play and I'm not. I don't understand why if your income, statement would have anything to do with the value of the building, but, with this building in particular, with the business, obviously it's my sister and I that own both entities, and there's two separate entities. One for the building, one for the business. So, you know, the accountant does that, again, I'm not good with that stuff, so I don't know what numbers they came, I mean, I'm not saying they're not legit, I'm just saying that I don't really know, I know that we have too much money, less people. But, and that's not here or there, but I just, it's just. Assessment. Did I answer your question, Chuck?
So I'm just curious as to the, you know, how up to date the income.
Well, I mean,
Which is,
again,
I don't need to know what the income is.
Yeah.
Just, and I don't know what these other properties,
yeah, I
assessments are based on, but,
will call to that since, you know, 11 years ago when we built the building, I always thought that it was less accessible. But
you did a thorough
Commercial team with the.
Commercial
With the.
income
Data provided. yes.
approach.
Yes. Well, the reason like commercial properties will rely on an income approach is because commercial properties is really valued on what that property generates versus a residential property. I mean, that's your home, somebody lives there, you know, live there, but people buying your business, so if you look at, well, what property producing, what can that, what justifiable sale price they have on, based on what it produces.
So you base this on 2022
Yeah.
information.
So then, once again, the information you provided is for us confidential.
Right, right, but, so I'm curious as to how up to date this is in consideration of the fact that, I think we know that the income for these types of businesses is steadily dropping off due to economic conditions and federal monies and so on. So I guess my question is, is there any recourse to just come back next year and say, hey, look, our income has dropped?
It depends on the type of contract. If it's a market outdated, usually next year goes to a maintenance contract. That's a contract the assessor has with the municipality.
Oh, that's way over my head.
So based on.
Yes, next year's a
Yeah,
maintenance year.
so it's like next year, Brandon can't just come back and say, well, here's my new income expense. I want it lower based on this, because then you gotta do it. You really have to give everybody in the village a chance to, well, okay, now I want my home compared to these new sales for this year. Well, but it's not a market update again to next year.
And you're using the standard practices
Yes,
for your assessments based on,
yeah,
what you can, and can't do.
correct, based on the best available data. Okay.
With our current contract, how long do we go into the maintenance?
Maintenance next year,
And then the year after that is
Yes.
another assessment?
No.
Or-
maintenance year.
Okay,
The schedule we want to be on, so it's been 7 years since our last reval. We really want to be on like a 3 to 5 year absolute max
Okay.
schedule. So I think we have it on the 3-year term is what we have scheduled, but obviously it depends on what the board chooses to do and if we have the funds for it. So, because revaluation years are much more expensive than maintenance years.
Okay.
So we signed, I think it was a 3-year contract with Accurate. And it included one reval and then the rest were maintenance years.
Yeah, so it'd be 2024, 25, 26, they're all maintenance years. And after that contract is up, it, she's, depends on if you want to go for a question or proposal for a new contract, for a new assessment, or renew with that.
Now, when a large commercial property like this, that it's being assessed, is it like boots on the ground getting into the building and looking at nooks and crannies of everything to assess
If
it?
it's a sale, we would visit that property.
Okay.
It's not a sale, like we're match assessors, we're not visiting every single parcel, we're using sales analysis.
From the last time it was sold type thing.
Well, for the community, we're using a sales analysis.
Okay.
Use percentage yourself, date, assessment based on the sale.
Okay, is that like an average percentage based off of total number of commercial buildings sold within that time
Based
period?
on, yes.
So Brandon, what is the current assessed value of that building? Does it say it was placed? Did I miss it someplace?
Yep, it's right here. This would be,
631.
that was the 2022.
Like at
It's-
675.
Yep, and it's currently dropped to
64.
860. Yeah. Any other questions for Brandon or Paul? Okay,
Seeing no more questions. I am now closing the testimony in this case. I will now open up the deliberations in this case by asking the Board of Review members to state, based upon the sworn testimony presented, whether the assessor's valuation is correct or incorrect.
so just a reminder, at this time, it's a time for the board of review to speak. You can talk to each other, but you cannot ask any questions. And as soon as we're ready for the roll call vote, Larry can let me know and I'll do that.
Give you a minute here to look things over.
And just so you know, in your packet, there are the sample motions to make when that time comes, and the very last page of your packet. There's motions to either affirm the assessment or to modify the assessment. So depending on what the board chooses to do, there is sample motions there. Great.
Kelsey, may I say something?
You sure can, Peggy.
Thank you. I'd like to address the assessor and ask if he felt that,
Peggy, you can't ask questions anymore. That period ended. You can only
Oh.
speak with the board.
okay. Okay, I guess I don't have the question then. Never mind.
I apologize, Peggy. I did not, I should have asked you specifically since you're on the line. If you had questions before I close. The question for you.
That's fine. I guess I had a question before I was going to, offer my, decision or offer my point of view. Thanks.
Well, and Peggy, you certainly can offer your point of view to the board at this point. It's just Paul and Brandon, you can't ask questions and they can't comment.
I guess this isn't really part of a decision. Well, before I made the decision, let me just address that I was wondering if the assessor felt that this was a very gross oversight on the assessment. And since the assessment was modified and you know, the problem I'm having here is that the microphone doesn't work very clearly, so I have to put the phone up to my ear and I can't really I probably make out 70% of what is said, which is, you know, an issue, I suppose, with Zoom or our microphones, but yeah, so I just wanted to know if that was if they felt that they were really out of line, and I do know that the child care facility is an entity that we don't have we don't have a comparable for, so it's really very difficult to make you know, to make a real definitive decision unless of course you know, there was a comparable. So when I think of the other buildings that Brandon had brought up as a comparison, you know, they were older. Some of those basements were, you know, basically rock and cracked and those kinds of issues. So he did have bathrooms. He does have a kitchen, those kinds of things, which is more like a home environment. But again, I don't know if that assessment reaches the point of $1 million or over. So those were my questions before we got to this point, I should say. So anyway, I'll just listen to the rest and then we can make a decision.
And Peggy, you did hear that the current assessment is $864,000 for the property?
That's the adjustment, right, is
864,000 is the current assessment. Okay,
Right.
you heard that? Okay.
Yes, that part I did hear about the third time, but I also saw it online. I'm sorry, I did not see, I saw the original assessment online, but I was able to decipher that through a number of times. So, yeah,
Okay.
I see that it was adjusted. So we can come to a decision or reach a compromise. I don't know, again, not being an assessor, I don't know what's fair. I'm having difficulty with that.
And you did hear, Peggy, that based upon the current standard practices and her additional information provided from Brandon, that the assessment was revised according to those common practices and statutes.
Yes,
Okay.
I did understand that. Mhm.
Okay.
Any other comments yet from the board? Are you ready for a vote?
We can get somebody to make a motion based on, what they.
Right. We would either move to affirm the assessment or move to modify the assessment. Those would be the two choices. Did you hear that, Peg? We will either make a motion to affirm the assessment or a motion to modify the assessment.
Thanks for that clarity. I did hear that. Thank you.
Yep.
And that has to be based upon the evidence provided
Correct.
and
Correct.
by either side.
Yeah.
Correct. So as of right now, the Board of Review, we assume that the assessor's valuation is correct unless the objector took the burden of proof and showed that it was incorrect.
I'm going to make a motion that we go ahead with the assessor's assessment.
To affirm the assessment.
Correct.
that correct? Okay. Okay, motion has been made to affirm the assessment. Is there a second?
We're talking about the adjusted assessment. I'm sorry. Is that correct?
864,000.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Is it more appropriate to use the language you had provided, or is that
That would be-
language?
That would be ideal. I mean, to affirm the assessment is,
Yeah.
Yeah, but you-
For item one of the of the motion to affirm that you provided the example for.
correct, yeah, it
Yes.
would be great to use that exact wording, but, a motion to affirm the assessment will work.
Peggy, would you be open to modifying the motion to read as per item one, right below the motion to affirm the assessment?
Okay, I'll
Pursuant
make a motion to affirm the assessment as per item 1. That,
I think that would be sufficient.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, is there a,
I'll second it.
okay? Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any more discussion?
We'll do a roll call for this one.
Seeing no more discussion, I would ask for a roll call vote.
Mike Bell,
Yes.
Larry Susie,
Yes.
Peggy Cruz,
yes,
Mike Marty,
Yes.
Chuck Phillipson,
Yes.
Roger Troutman.
Yes.
And then Brandon, you're free to go. Yep, and I'll mail you an updated notice in the mail with the determinations from tonight. That'll say the 864,000. I don't know. That'd be a great question for Paul. I don't know that we can sign that now. I know there's an official form that I have to send you, but it's, I don't know. Yeah, yeah. So there, you won't have to sign anything. I'll mail it certified mail tomorrow. So you'll get it. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you for your time, Brandon.
Then you can go ahead and
We'll
read.
let the record show that Brandon Legler has left the Board of Review at 5:47 this 30th day of August 2023.
And then Larry, just a little change in the script, and I think some of you may remember this from last year, so statutorily, we have to be in session for 2 hours. That clock started at 5:05, but because we don't have any other objections, and as of right now, there's no other public here, we can recess until, like, I believe last year we recessed until 6:55. And what happened was I stayed here and made sure if somebody came, I would call the board back. But we'd be in recess, so you're free to stay here, to go wherever you choose, to go home, whatever you want to do. But we'd have to come back into session at 6:55. So if we would want to do that, I just need a motion in a second to recess until a specific time.
I'll move, we recess until, you need a specific time?
Yeah.
7 o'clock.
Sure.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are recessed then, so everybody is due back to this table at 7 o'clock, unless I call you ahead of time.
But we should plan on being here early. So that.
Yes,
Early.
we can officially, and we can.
I know.
We can officially
5
close at 7:05, so we cannot close until 7:05. So does she rejoin it?
So